Some people call it a spiritual war, some people call it the culture war. One thing for certain is that white people are definitely under attack, and when someone as prominent as Elon Musk calls it out and points it out, the general automaton will go into complete meltdown. Elon Musk is on a racist posting spree again. Musk says that white people will go from being a small minority of the world's population today to virtually being extinct, and backs President Trump's attack on Somali immigrants. Old billionaire Musk has spent the past day spreading and praising claims that white people are on the verge of extinction. 8% of the world's population, every Western country being overrun with sub-Saharan Africans and Middle Eastern rats, and you think that that's sustainable and we're not going to go extinct? Craziness. Somali immigrants have no right to be in America, and non-profits who support them are committing treason and should be met with force. I don't know if I've ever heard a better statement than that. Like, NGOs that support the invasion of our countries should be met with force. And people lose their mind on social media, as you can imagine. Why are white people so afraid of becoming a minority? Does the US treat minorities poorly or something? Haha, this is a nice satirical post. Of course she gets destroyed here where it says Haitians killed their white people when they took power. Zimbabweans killed white people when they took power. South Africans are killing their white people after taking power. Somehow the trend is lost on most people, and I feel that that is one of the most important statements at the very end of that tweet. It's just lost on people. People have been so conditioned by a corrupt system. They've been programmed and indoctrinated since birth. It's hard to break that paradigm. Even when the people that are helping overrun the white populace, even when these absolute vile scumbag mainstream media people tell you what's happening right there in front of your eyes, the general normie is incapable of intaking that information and being appalled. They actually clap along with it.
And white Americans will soon be a minority, and that's great.
Whites will not be the majority. I mean, it's an exciting transformation of the country. It's an exciting evolution and progress of our country.
We are going to be a white minority very, very soon. I'm okay with that.
America is going to look very different in 100 years. You're not going to be able to tell you're black, you're white, you're Hispanic, you're Puerto Rican, whatever.
Of course, this is over on Tim Pool's show. You'd imagine that sort of vile rhetoric from that fucking shill. The fact that we have late night TV show hosts laughing at it, joking about the replacement of white people. Aren't you excited to look around and not see any white people and just have browns everywhere? Isn't that just like something to get to bed early tonight in anticipation of it possibly coming even sooner? Yeah, no. Nobody actually wants that. Doesn't matter how insistent you are with this sort of programming. Normal people behind closed doors, when they're not in earshot of their work colleagues or anyone that might deem it politically incorrect, are saying the same thing, like, holy shit, we are under attack. And it really is a question of when or will white people ever wake up? Will they realize that we have to be as tribalistic as every other nation and every other ethnicity? Because if we don't, we are bollocksed. And all these libtards that we see talking here, they're the first to get it. Trust me, when the numbers balance out and whites are down here and browns are there, these guys are the guys that are getting it first. Not the conspiracy theorists or the fascists online. Definitely not them. These cocks with their lattes and their diversity is our strength, and oh my god, can you smell the spices? Get the fuck out of here. You're getting dragged through them neighborhoods.
The first time in American history, the number of white people went down.
White population is declining for the first time in history in America.
White people will not be the majority in the country anymore.
This will be the first generation ever in American history in which whites will be a minority.
We have to kill white people.
When do we start killing white people?
And you could watch these little clips and you can get triggered by some black lad talking about when do we start killing white people, and it's all a joke, and he doesn't get demonetized, he doesn't get shut down under a Digital Service Act for hate speech in his country. Nothing of the sort, because everything just kind of flows one way in regards to that. But here in Ireland, we are suffering under the same manipulation and the same contradictory terms as what we see here in America. And like the last post said in regards to South Africa, I've done a bunch of of videos on South Africa because I think the correlation is very, very close between South Africa and Ireland. That trajectory is not something I'm looking forward to. I saw this article of a white South African are divided on the US refugee offer. Of course they are, because people want to stay, they want to fight, they want to protect the land that their people built, that their people cultivated. I think that when the Europeans arrived in South Africa, the biggest structure that was built was like a molehill, like 5 foot tall, because the blacks were obviously incapable of infrastructure and building and engineering and all that. We bring all this to them, we cultivate the land, we turn it into beautiful cities, and because of political correctness and communism, everything gets inverted, and we're in a position where we get to a place in South Africa where whites have to sleep behind a 13-foot high wall, electric fences, armoured doors, at every point of the house, because of the onslaught from savages who target white people and specifically white farmers. And that is why they have been offered asylum by President Trump in the United States of America, which has had the left and Democrats and your general automatons losing their mind. Because what is more virtuous? Inviting a couple of 100,000 Somalians or a couple of 100,000 Palestinians, or maybe bringing in a couple of 100 white people who are seriously under attack? What's going to get you the most browning points in the office? What's going to get you the most browning points over on social media? It's not posting about a beautiful blonde-haired, blue-eyed family from South Africa. Certainly not. They have to be savages from Somalia or from the Middle East. That'll get a little bit of virtue, but over time they will come for you. Elon Musk says children should be proud that whites in the West ended slavery. And this particular headline goes on to say, in a ahistorical ex-post. My ignorance is at play, of course. I had to Google what ahistorical meant, and the meaning, of course, is lacking historical perspective or accuracy. Sometimes that ignores, contradicts, or is unrelated to the actual historical facts and context of the development. Okay, simple question. Who ended the slave trade? Again, you're dealing with an AI, you're dealing with Wikipedia-based information. The transatlantic slave trade, largest and most infamous slave trade in history. 15 million Africans were shipped to the Americas between the 16th and 1900. Again, all these numbers in the first sentence can be contested because there was a lot of white and Irish slaves that were shipped there as well. That's always left out until you do a deep dive. It goes on to talk about William Wilberforce, British politician, evangelical Christians, and it names out a multitude of British men that were at the forefront of ending the slave trade. And it goes on to a short answer where it says, there was no one person, but William Wilberforce and the British abolitionist movement got the job and got it over the line. I asked a follow-up question, so white people, right? And they answer it with a very vague and, touchy little answer where it says, not quite that simple, but in terms of who actually stopped the transatlantic slave trade, it was white-led British institutions of power. You could have just said that at the very beginning of the answer. You could have just said it was a white British political and naval power movement that got it stopped. Really, when we jump back here and we talk about a historical post, really what you should be doing is just saying thank you. Because what we're actually doing is we're teaching young children that have white skin to hate themselves, hate their parents, their grandparents, and to hate all the historic wonders that our people brought to the world. This article goes on to say that Elon Musk is demonstrably racist. He's aligning himself with an orangey white nationalist president whose inauguration he celebrated by throwing up a Nazi salute is honestly the least of how vile this human being is. The fact that they think that Donald Trump is like some ultra-nationalist president bewilders me. It bewilders me. I mean, read the headlines. Was it 500 billion? It's just getting shipped over to Israel, a country in the Middle East that is not white, according to them, and he's a white supremacist or something like that. I don't know. It goes on to say that Elon Musk defended the Dilbert creator, Scott Adams, when he called black people a hate group. And he said that he wants nothing got to do with them, nor should any other white people. He suggested you should get the hell away from black people and stop trying to help us. Elon Musk also called the Oscars a woke contest because he thought there was too many non-white people winning. It's 100% correct. They put in a stipulation that your movie can't be nominated for an Oscar unless it has a black person in it. How is that right? Meritocracy out the window. He co-signed racist pseudoscience that claims black college students have lower IQs. Okay, without evidence. Musk literally believes that fewer white people being born, coupled with an increase in non-white immigrants, will cause the collapse of a civilization. We literally just heard a gaggle of left-wing political leaders and mainstream media leaders talk about how that is actually happening, and it's a very good thing. And in terms of what's happening throughout the world and what is happening in South Africa and the correlation between South Africa and Ireland, I believe that Cyril Ramaphosa just passed the Expropriation Act, and I think he got it through the Senate or whatever way that works. But basically, he's just made it legal to go in and physically take the land off white people. And the entire left-wing movement of America are crying because some of these white people want to come and live in America. Here in Ireland, we've been headed down this exact same path for a long time. We have our leader here, our Prime Minister, or I don't know, maybe he's not Prime Minister this week, but he will be next week. He's asked a question about white privilege here in Ireland. Remember, we have been under the boot of the British for 800 years. I believe we're just over 100 years of independence. Halfway through that, we were signed away back to the EU as well, so make of that what you will. But when asked about teaching Irish children about white privilege, have a listen to what this absolute spastic says.
Food funding for the Yellow Flag program, which is operating in schools across the country, and as part of its anti-racism training that it's giving to students, it's teaching them about concepts like white privilege, the idea that all white people have inherent advantages in life because of the color of their skin. Do you think that that's an appropriate thing that children should be taught about in schools?
So I'm not sure exactly how it's taught or into the detail of the curriculum, but I do know the Amber Flag project, and I do think it's a really important.
Well, the Yellow Flag.
Sorry, Yellow Flag project. And I do know it. I do know it to be an important project that does teach about diversity, inclusion, and anti-racism in our schools. It is an initiative that I'm supportive of, and I do think these things are taught in an appropriate way.
But on the white privilege point, I mean, do you understand why some parents would find that to be a troubling idea, that children are being taught to view themselves and others through a racial lens about who has advantages and privileges on the basis of their race? Is that not an inherently racist concept?
No, I do think racism is a reality in our society.
Sure, but that's sort of a separate...
It depends on how you frame it, and you'll frame it a certain way, and that's fine. But I do think there are facts in relation to racism in this country. Racism is real in this country, and the reality is people of minority backgrounds, people of different races do experience racism in the country, and not just in Ireland.
Intolerable. So one of Ireland's leaders totally supports the idea of teaching white children that they are inherently racist and that they do in fact possess white privilege, and that he supports this sort of curriculum. What I would say to the leaders of Ireland and to any woke lunatic who's watching this and supporting this sort of rhetoric, here's an idea for you. Instead of teaching white kids that they're inherently evil and that their ancestors were inherently evil, how about you stop emptying the third world into Ireland? How about you stop prioritizing the feelings of illegal immigrants from Africa and from the Middle East and DIT scammers from India? How about we just remigrate all these people, and then maybe we can teach the Irish children a little bit of history about how our state was built, the sacrifices Irish people made to become a republic, to become independent, and what we have done as Irish people throughout history in terms of having a boot on our neck and always being at the forefront of arts, science, music. How about that? How about we teach a little bit of patriotism to our white kids instead of beating them over the head with buzzwords from the US and DEI and white privilege? So when your kid comes home from their Catholic school this Friday with their project, their obligatory Rosa Parks, Nina Simone or Nelson Mandela project, reject it. Every bit of it is bullshit. Every bit of it is inverted. Rosa Parks was a plant. It was all a big publicity stunt by a Jewish organisation. Nina Simone was a junkie and Nelson Mandela was a terrorist. Legitimate. Refute this shit. Tell them to get fucked. And it doesn't matter how many politicians stand up in government buildings in Ireland and talk about white privilege. Just reject it. They're a minority. If any of that made sense, do me a favour. Maybe like the video, subscribe. There's a hype button. Give that an old lash. Gets the old video pumped out there a little bit more. And I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.